Hey everybody, JJ here, Bolt to the Bus. It is Sunday, June 7th. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Got some nice articles here to summarize and analyze here for you today. People are trashing their stimulus money. What does that mean? 1 in 4 Americans face food dependency. That means they have to get assistance somewhere for food. That's just a huge number, 25% of Americans. Credit card debt drops. That's very interesting. What's going on with that? And finally, the Fed-induced crash is coming? Question mark. There's a nice article out saying just that the Fed is going to purposely allow this market to crash. At some point, when will it be? Well, let's get into the news here. Recent article here out of CNBC. People are throwing away their stimulus debit cards by accident. This article also goes on to tell you how can you replace the card if you are one of the people that didn't get it or maybe got it and threw it away. What's happening, people are thinking in many cases that these cards are spam or that these are solicitations because the envelopes are showing up in just white plain blank envelopes with just the return address, and it doesn't let people know what it is. Now the problem with putting it on the envelope and saying, hey, this is your stimulus check, they're more likely to get swiped from our friends at the post office or mailbox looters and things like that. So it's a very tough deal because you don't want to make it too obvious, but then if you make it look too plain, people are just throwing these cards away. And I've been hearing a lot about people saying that they haven't received their check. Well, maybe people have received it, but they ended up throwing away their debit card. Now, most of the IRS stimulus payments were sent out via electronic deposit into checking accounts. There was also paper checks, but then this other way was the debit card. So just think about how many millions, maybe billions of dollars are wasted with this type of setup here where people are not self-sufficient, where so many people have to rely on the government. Remember, the more government you have, the more fraud and waste you have also. And imagine how much we're having to pay all of these government employees to process these checks, to take the phone calls. Just so much wasted money. And again, I just wish there was a way to get the money masters out of this and let people be self-sufficient. But this is the type of system that we're all forced to live under right now. Next up, 1 in 4 Americans face food dependency. And how they came up with this number, here's a nice chart right here. 14% of people have cut the size of their meals or skipped meals because there wasn't enough money for food. 13% of people visited a food bank or food pantry or charity to get food or meals. 13% applied for additional benefits such as the federal SNAP program. Overall, that's over 25% of people that are food dependent in some way or are missing meals or cutting back on meals because they simply can't afford it. Now this should be a big red flag. I mean, this red flag has been waving for a long time, but think about this. 1 in 4 people having problems having enough food to eat and have to get help and assistance and go to food banks. And we've been reporting on it here, so it's not new news, but think about this number and just think about the type of system that we're in right now. Most of us are working in office jobs now. So one of the most important things for people is food, but yet we have the people that grow the food are the ones that are having some of the most difficult time right now. Right? This is the state of the Americans. So Americans are heavily dependent on the system. The hand that feeds is well, of course, the people behind the printing press. They can send out endless stimulus cards. They can send out universal basic income if they want to. They have unlimited supply of money to send out. So then a lot of people are asking, why do they ever ask average Americans to donate to charity when they have an unlimited currency printing press? Well, that's because it's about getting you under control, controlling the population via the financial system, keeping you in debt. They don't want you to know they have unlimited currency they can create out of nothing. They get everybody pointing the finger at each other, divide and conquer. Look at the latest events. Have you ever seen the country more divided? They don't want you looking at the top. They don't want you asking questions about the system. And it may end up starving us out. Our complacency and our foolishness as a population here in the United States may end up with us digging our own graves. I mean, look at 25% of us can't even get food without some sort of assistance. Next up here, credit card debt drops. What is going on? All these job losses, you would think that people would be running up their debt as they have to now live off of credit cards. Well, just the opposite happened. What's going on with that? Recent article here out of Forbes, credit card debt drops. The 10.5% drop in the space of 11 weeks was the steepest decline in American credit card balances since the Great Recession. Now, it did fall 22% during the Great Recession, but that took a whole year to play out. This just happened in 11 weeks, a 10.5% drop. So it was the steepest drop in credit card debt. So why did that happen? If Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, well, it happened because of the shutdown. People a lot of times were stuck in. They couldn't go out. They were quarantined. Even if they wanted to go out, a lot of their places to shop at, the restaurants were closed down. Many retailers boarded up and closed. And you had people that were just simply too afraid to go out because of the sickness. And this shows you that when people need to cut back or they have to cut back, they can. So this shows you all the non-essential spending in the economy, all the spending on entertainment and things that people really don't need to survive. So if people really had the stick-to-itiveness and the motivation to cut back on the spending, they actually could do it. And this drop in credit card debt proves it. But the problem is people don't want to cut back on spending. People have just come to accept the fact that they're going to live paycheck to paycheck for the rest of their life, so they go out and spend foolishly. They take on vacations that they don't need. They buy things they don't need, entertainment items. They go to Disneyland and spend hundreds of dollars just for one day, just so the kids can walk around and go on rides. Right? And I get it. I'm not trying to be a spoil sport. I've taken my kids to amusement parks, SeaWorld here a few times. Actually, never been to Disney World, Disneyland, Disney World, because I just think it's too darn expensive. But this shows you that people are foolish spenders and how much non-essential spending is actually taking place in this country. Right. Also, just to be thorough, we have credit card companies that were cutting back on people's credit limits, so I think that could have also been a significant contributing factor to the decline in spending. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with this here. A Fed-induced crash. Is it coming? Well, the Fed, they inflated the stock market. They stimulated the economy with cash injections and stimulus checks, cards, and direct deposits. What's going to happen if they pull back? Is there a plan for the Fed to just pull back and let this whole system come collapsing down? Recent article here out of Brandon Smith over at the Birch Gold Group. The Fed just got the perfect cover for the collapse of the U.S. economy. Now, we've talked quite a while about how this is going to be used as the scapegoat, as the blame, to take the blame for the economic collapse. We also talked about the timing. They're likely not going to let it fully collapse until after November for obvious reasons. And let me just read the beginning out of this, and it does, again, it kind of echoes a lot what we've been talking about here, so I think it's a good article. The scapegoating has already started. In almost every sector of the economy that is collapsing, the claim is that, quote, everything was fine until the pandemic happened, unquote. From tumbling web news platforms to small businesses to major corporations, the virus outbreak and the subsequent national riots will become the excuse for failure. So let me pause the article right there. Maybe these riots and this looting was all set up between the two parties to cover for the failed banking system. Remember, the two parties, they want us both fighting against each other. They don't want us pointing at the system. So maybe this is a contrived, a coordinated effort between the two parties. I'm talking about the Dems and the Republicans, to create chaos. I mean, look at all the tweets that are coming out, and look at all the bickering back and forth that are really causing a very big distraction, and has, one group fighting against the other group instead of pointing at the system. Let's keep going here. The establishment will try to rewrite history, and many people will go along with it because the truth makes them look bad. And what is that truth? The truth is that the U.S. economy in some ways and the global economy was already collapsing. The system's dependency on ultra-low interest rates and central bank stimulus creates perhaps the largest debt bubble in history, the everything bubble, yes. and that the bubble began imploding at the end of 2018, triggered primarily by the Fed raising rates and dumping its balance sheet into economic weakness, just like it did at the start of the Great Depression. Fed Chair Jerome Powell knew what would happen if this policy was initiated, and he even warned about it in the minutes of the October 2012 Fed meeting. And yet once he became the head of the central bank, he did it anyway. Yes, that's the end of that excerpt. Just look for this article. I'll put a link down below if you're interested. The Fed knows exactly what their actions, what the outcomes will be of their actions. It's no happy accident, nothing like that. The economic recovery is contrived, it's manipulated, and so is the decline. Remember, when they let the housing market collapse back in 2008, it didn't have to collapse. They could have went in and they could have put a freeze on foreclosures just like they're doing now. They could have did massive debt forgiveness, but instead millions of people lost their homes, and the home ownership rate still hasn't recovered. This is an economic boom and bust cycle plan to extract the wealth of the bottom 90% up to the top 10%. And I think most of you probably know this by now, but please let me know what you think down in the comments about these articles, about the trashed stimulus cards, about the drop in the credit card debt, and this article out of Birch Gold Group, that they know exactly what they're doing. What's their plan? Thanks everybody for watching. Bye for now.